Alright, so what about the useful life of an intangible asset? Okay, so intangible assets are expensed according to their life expectancy. Alright, meaning that the cost of intangible assets are to be allocated every year, okay, every year throughout its useful life. Okay, so the useful life of an intangible asset should be assessed as either finite or indefinite, right? Indefinite useful life meaning that there is no foreseeable limit to the period over which the asset is expected to generate net cash inflow to the entity. Alright, so in determining the useful life of an intangible asset, the factors to be considered are the expected usage, the product life cycle, technological obsolescence, expected action of competitors, level of maintenance expenditure required, period of control over asset, and legal limit, because for a certain types of intangible asset we do have a legal limit of using the asset. An intangible asset with finite useful life should be amortized on a systematic basis, usually straight line basis over its useful life as follow. Alright. So, number one, amortization begins when asset is available for use. Amortization ceases at the earlier of date when asset is derecognized and when it is classified as MFRS5 asset. Amortization method should reflect the pattern in which future economic benefits are consumed. Otherwise, straight line basis is used. Amortization expense is recognized in the statement of profit or loss. The amortization period and the amortization method, okay, for intangible asset must be reviewed every year. Okay, it must be reviewed every year. Okay, so now let's look at examples of intangible asset with finite useful life. All right. Okay, so let's look at together example 9. Okay, Lara Berhad develops and produce printer for office use. On 1st January 2016, it incurred RM300,000 for expenses on legal fees to obtain the patent on a new printer. The patent's useful life is 10 years. Amortization is based on a straight line basis. So explain the accounting treatment for the above situation. Alright, so what happened in the transaction here? Okay, so we do have information for the acquisition of the patent. Okay, for the acquisition of the patent. All right, and that's it. Okay, and that's it. And we have another information related to the useful life of the printer. Okay, so this is an example of finite, okay, useful life. All right. Okay, so we are going to talk about, so the first thing that we are going to talk about is the recognition. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to talk about is the recognition. Okay, so can we recognize the patent as an intangible asset? Yes. All right, so the patent was to be recognized as an intangible asset because it meets the definition and the recognition of the intangible asset. The patent is identifiable. Okay, the patent was identifiable, controllable, and probable that future economic benefit will flow to the entity. And the cost of 300,000 can be measured reliably. All right. Since the patent has an estimated useful life of 10 years, okay, since the patent has an finite useful life, therefore we are going to amortize, okay, the patent over the useful life. Okay, we are going to amortize the patent over the useful life. Okay, but then we need to talk about also the amortization. Okay, the amount of annual amortization expense was 300,000 divided by 10. 300,000 divided by 10, so equal to RM 30 Okay, 300,000 divided by 10. Alright, so we need to mention also the amount of annual amortization expense was RM30,000. Okay, and if you like to add, okay, because we are talking about the accounting treatment, okay, for year 2016, since it does not mention is it only on the 1st January or is it up to at the end of the year, and then if we look at the journal entry prepared here, it is up to 31st December. Alright, so the amount of annual amortization, so we have to mention also about the carrying amount. Okay, we need to add also about the carrying amount. So okay, as at 31st December 2016, the carrying amount of, okay, the carrying amount of patent, okay, was, okay, so RM 300,000 minus 30,000 is equal to RM 270,000. Okay, so these are the things that you have to include when you discuss on the accounting treatment. Okay, because this is the first year. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to talk about is the recognition. Okay, if you have to talk about the, if you have to discuss starting from the year of purchase, so you have to talk about the recognition. Okay, whether you can recognize or not the item as intangible asset. Yes, if it is yes, then we are going to talk about the useful life. Is it finite useful life or is it indefinite useful life? All right, okay, and then how much the amount of amortization expense, all right, to be provided every year. All right, and then we're going to end, okay, we're going to end our discussion with the carrying amount at the end of the year. Okay, you don't have to come up with a very complicated sentence. It's very simple. As at 31st December 2016, the carrying amount of patent was RM 270,000, and that's it. Okay, all right, so let's look at here the suggested solution given here. The expense incurred, alright, on a legal fee should be recognized as expenditure incurred in acquiring an intangible asset, which is a patent. Therefore, the patent should be recognized as an asset as it meets the definition and recognition criteria of intangible asset. Okay, since the patent has a finite useful life, it must be amortized over the useful life. Alright, so if you want to be exact, then you have to state it also, okay, to be amortized over 10 years of useful life. Alright. Okay, so what about the journal entry? So the journal entry for year 2016, first is related to the acquisition of the patent. So debit intangible asset patent 300,000, credit cash 300,000, debit SOPL amortization expense 30,000, credit. Okay, so we prefer this okay, we prefer this method, okay, where we are going to credit to account accumulated amortization, okay, 30,000. Alright, so let's look at another example. Example 10. On 1st January 2014, Hari Berhad acquired publishing rights at a cost of 9 million and a legal life of 10 years. On 1st January 2016, Hari reviewed the useful life, and it was revealed that the economic benefits derived from the intangible asset would be another 3 years. In addition, the recoverable amount of the intangible asset on this date was determined to be 6.3 million. Explain the accounting treatment for year ended 31st December 2014, 2015, and 2016. Alright, so when we have this question and you are required to discuss the accounting treatment, you have to think of all possible accounting treatment to be included in your discussion. Alright, so you are required to start your discussion from 31st December 2014, meaning that whatever happened in year 2014 are to be discussed. Alright. Okay, so what happened in year 2014? Hari Berhad acquired the publishing right. When you're required to discuss starting from the acquisition date of the intangible asset, you have to discuss on the recognition. Can you recognize the asset as intangible asset? Alright, and then can the cost be measured reliably? And then you have to discuss also about the subsequent measurement. Okay, subsequent measurement meaning, do we need to provide for the amortization? Yes, because this publishing right has a finite useful life of 10 years. Alright, okay, and then how much is the amortization expense? Alright, and then what is the carrying amount at the end of the year? Okay, for year 2015, we are going to begin with since there is no other information in year 2015, meaning that we are going to continue to provide for amortization as usual, and don't forget to provide okay, the information on the carrying amount at the end of the year. Alright, and then look at what happened in year 2016. Okay, in year 2016, what happened? The company reviewed the useful life. It was revealed that the economic benefit, okay, would be only another 3 years. Okay, what is the original estimated useful life? What is the original remaining estimated useful life? Okay, alright, so the remaining is, alright, so the remaining is, if you calculate, alright, so from year 2014, there should be 10 years useful life. Alright, and then in year 2016, okay, the original estimated useful life should be 8 years. Alright, should be 8 years. But what happened now? Okay, what happened now is that after they review, they identified that, or they discovered that, okay, the remaining useful life would be only 3 years compared to the original estimated useful life, which should be 8 years. Okay, so what does it mean here? It means that there is an impairment of asset. There is an impairment of asset. That's why you will give another information here about the recoverable amount. When you see the words recoverable amount, it means that this is an impairment of asset. Only from the impairment test, they are going to give you, they are going to determine, okay, the recoverable amount. Okay, all right. So how to prepare the discussion for this one? Right, can we recognize the publishing right as intangible asset? So we need to answer that question first, okay, before we proceed with the working and everything else. Yes, the publishing right can be recognized as an intangible asset because it meets the definition and recognition criteria. Okay, so because of that, meaning we are going to prepare an asset account for publishing rights. Okay, and then we need to provide for amortization, and then we're going to find out the carrying amount at the end of the year. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is to prepare the working. So I'm going to share with you another window, all right, for the preparation of the workings and also how to answer the question. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, all right. Okay, so when you prepare the working, okay, prepare the working starting from the date of purchase, regardless of when you are required to discuss of the accounting treatment. So always start your working from the date of purchase so that you can see clearly, okay, all the movement in the publishing rights, okay, in the asset account. Okay, so on 1st January 2014, okay, so this is the working here. Okay, so on 1st January 2014, the cost is 9 million. Okay, the cost is 9 million. So this is the initial cost. All right. And then we are going to provide for amortization. We already discussed just now that, okay, because the publishing rights, okay, has a finite useful life, so we are going to provide for amortization. All right. So we are going to show the amortization expense, okay, and the carrying amount at the end of the year. Okay, it is better that you do it separately, okay, year by year, because you are required to discuss the accounting treatment for year 2014, 2015 and 2016. Better not to combine. All right. Okay, so what happened in year 2015? Okay, we are going to provide another amortization expense. All right, and then we calculate the carrying amount. Okay, but in year 2016, okay, in year 2016, okay, there is an indication for impairment of asset. Why am I saying that there is an indication for impairment of asset? Because when they review the estimated useful life, the remaining estimated useful life was reduced from 8 years to only 3 years. All right, so we need to conduct an impairment test by comparing the carrying amount and recoverable amount, and then from the comparison that we made, okay, the carrying amount is higher than the recoverable amount, hence we need to provide for impairment loss, meaning that we need to reduce from 7.9 million to 6.3 million. So here we have an impairment loss on 1st January 2016. Okay, so because of that, the new carrying amount for publishing rights, okay, as what, okay, is 6.3 million. Okay, all right, and then what is the carrying amount at the end of the year? So as usual, we are going to provide for another amortization expense, but the computation of the amortization expense will be different from the original amortization expense because of the change in the carrying amount and then because of the change in the estimated useful life. So 6.3 million divided by the remaining useful life, which is 3 years. All right. Okay, so how to discuss? Okay, so for year 2014, you are going to focus on this information. All right, and then for year 2015, okay, starting from here to here. Why starting from 31st December? Because the closing balance for 2014 would become the opening balance for year 2015. All right, and then this is for year 2016. So make sure you include all of this in your discussion. You don't have to come up with a very complicated discussion, a very simple one, as long as you mention everything in your discussion. Okay, so what do we discuss in year 2014? As I said just now, okay, if we are required to discuss starting from the date of acquisition, we have to include in our discussion the recognition of asset. Okay, the recognition of asset, whether we can recognize the cost that we have incurred as intangible asset or not. Okay, so let's look at example here. Okay, let's look at the suggested solution here. So for year ended 31st December 2014, okay, the publishing rights acquired on 1st January 2014 were to be recognized as intangible asset. Okay, why? All right, at an initial cost of 9 million because they met the definition and recognition of intangible asset. The publishing rights were identifiable, controllable, and probable that future economic will flow to the entity. The cost incurred also can be measured reliably. Since the publishing rights has a finite useful life of 10 years, the amortization expense was to be provided every year at RM 900,000. So how do we calculate this one? 9 million divided by 10. As at 31st December 2014, the carrying amount of publishing right was 8.1 million. Okay. In year 2015, you are going to repeat the same information. Okay, you end with 8.1 million in year 2014. You are going to start with 8.1 million in year 2015. Okay, as at 1st January 2015, the carrying amount of publishing right was 8.1 million. The amortization expense provided for the year was 900,000. As at 31st December 2015, the carrying amount of publishing right was 7.9 million. You are basically repeating whatever that you have prepared above in the working. Okay, you mentioned about this one, you mentioned about this, you mentioned about this. All right, okay, that's it. You have covered everything. Okay. What happened in year 2016? Okay, as usual, begin with the carrying amount at the beginning of the year. As at 1st January 2016, the carrying amount of publishing right was 7.9 million. On the same date, the company discovered that the remaining useful life of publishing right was only 3 years compared to their original remaining useful life of 8 years. There was an indication for impairment of asset. Hence, an impairment test was to be conducted where the carrying amount was to be compared with the recoverable amount. So you have to mention that. Okay, when there is a decrease in the estimated remaining useful life of asset, okay, it means that there was an indication for impairment. Another clue for you to know whether or not there is an indication for impairment when the question give you the recoverable amount or fair value less cost to sell or value in use. All right, go back to the topic on impairment of asset in MFRS116. Okay, look at the basic measurement of asset. Okay, look at again the basic measurement of asset. Okay, how do we identify the recoverable amount? So recoverable amount is the higher of fair value less cost to sell and value in use. Alright, the difference in this question is that you have been given the recoverable amount, so you don't have to identify on your own. It is given. So all you have to do is to compare the recoverable amount with the carrying amount. Whenever you have any information related to recoverable amount, you have to know that, okay, this is impairment. This is impairment test. Okay, this is there is an indication for impairment. Alright, then you have to conduct impairment test. So how to conduct impairment test? By comparing the carrying amount and the recoverable amount. You have to mention about all of this. Sometimes marks will be given here, okay, because they want to test you whether you know or not that in this question Okay, they are talking about the impairment. Whether you know or not, they are talking about the impairment. Alright. So on the same date, the company discovered that the remaining useful life was only 3 years compared to the original remaining useful life of 8 years. There was an indication for impairment of asset, hence an impairment test was to be conducted where the carrying amount was to be compared with the recoverable amount. Okay, so the carrying amount of 7.9 million was higher than the recoverable amount of 6.3 million. Thus, an impairment loss of 1.6 million was to be provided and recognized in SOPL as an expense. The carrying amount was to be restated to its recoverable amount. Okay, the amortization expense provided for the year was RM 2.1 million and the carrying amount at the end of the year was 4.2 million. Okay, you cover everything. Okay, if you are required to prepare the journal entry, okay, if you are required to prepare the journal entry, then you prepare the journal entry. So what will be the journal entry for the amortization expense? Debit. Okay, so this one is debit SOPL. Okay, credit accumulated amortization. Okay, same amount. Okay, this one is for okay. Another journal entry to be prepared is copy this one for year 2015 if you are required to prepare the journal entry. Okay, what about okay, this one also the journal entry for the amortization, except that we have to change the value to 2.1 million. Alright, and then this one, what about the impairment loss? Okay, so debit SOPL impairment loss of 1.6 million, and then you credit accumulated. Okay, we credit to accumulated impairment loss 1.6 million. Alright, okay, so if you are required to prepare the journal entry, this is the journal entry. If you are required to discuss, this is the discussion. Okay, alright.